skedaddle maybe around 8:50, so we want to kind of get at it if it goes that long. Thanks again for coming. I do want to just welcome everybody and let you know that the last time that I had, can everybody hear me okay? The last time I had a microphone in my hand was when Attorney General and now Governor-elect Abbott came to Frisco, and I was fortunate enough to get to introduce him. And I got in a little bit of hot water with some of the extreme left press because I told a joke to lead everything off. Because, you know, it's you want to get the crowd rocking and rolling. I thought it was a cute, humorous joke, and I did want to share with you real quickly. You can judge for yourself whether we condemned Ms. Davis to hell or not. Silly side, but. So I said, you know, she clearly, by any objective measure, didn't run the best campaign. And clearly, Governor-elect Abbott ran a very effective campaign, regardless of whether or not you supported Governor Abbott. And so she had debacle after debacle, it seemed. So I said to the very partisan crowd that night, I said, have you all heard about the latest Wendy Davis debacle? And they groaned and moaned, and oh yeah, well I said, well she was at a elementary school of all places, and she was in a first grade classroom, and she saw a little boy with a big coffee table book about whales, and she went up to him, and that's a good photo of him. And so she asked him about whales, and she said, wow, she made a comment, well those whale, that whale there looks as big as a dinosaur. And the little boy is very well educated, and he said, well, Ms. Davis, actually, the blue whale is the largest animal in the animal kingdom, and it's bigger than any dinosaur ever was. So she was a little caught off guard, but then the little boy saved her by asking her question, by saying, Ms. Davis, how many people can a whale fit in its belly? And she said, well, she actually knew the answer to this question, because the whale, even though the belly's real large, it's a large animal, they're very narrow necks, so they can't fit a human being through their neck into the belly. And that confused the boy, and he asked again, and she held firm. But he said, Ms. Davis, that can't be true, because Jonah got swallowed by a whale. And she was a little taken aback by that, sharp little boy. And she said, well, it's just that's not true, and Jonah couldn't have been because the throat's too narrow. And he got a little angry and frustrated, and the little boy said, well, Ms. Davis, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah. And then, not to be outdone, Ms. Davis asked the little boy, well, what if Jonah went to hell? And then the boy said, Ms. Davis, well, then you can ask him. I'm not condemning anyone to hell. In fact, it was a 6-year-old boy that made the comment anyway. It was a joke, innocent joke, but that's how I think the headline was, Abbott surrogate condemns Ms. Davis to hell. So, you know, so don't believe everything you read. But I would like to welcome everybody again and ask Kelly Sarah if he'd come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And
join me in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Could I have the Mayor of Providence Village, Dave Shuck, lead us? Oh, I'm sorry, Tony Favory. Where's Tony? Can you lead us in the Texas pledge? Okay. Yeah, come on. You're gonna do the invitation.
If you join me in the pledge to the Texas flag.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
And now the Mayor of Providence Village will lead us in the invitation. Dave Shuck.
I have to add one little point to the story. So I was there the day over in Frisco when he made that joke. And I was sitting there watching our newly elected governor, and he went, so it was really funny from my angle. Anyway, so first off, I want to say I'm very honored to be able to be up here in front of you tonight and to have this opportunity. Like many of you in this room, I think the world of Rep. Pat Fallon. And so anytime he asks me to do something, I never hesitate, which is evidence and making me go out and do crazy stuff. But I really appreciate that. And so when I was asked to do the invocation, there was a verse that just popped up and I wanted to share. And Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked man rules, the people groan. And I don't know if you're like me, Surely not. When I look around our nation and I look at the people that are leading our nation, I groan. I groan. And the people around me groan. And it's louder groans all the time. But I'm optimistic. And I look around our communities and I see that there's great leaders in our communities. We have great leaders in our local city governments. We have great leaders in our county. I mean, we're blessed in Denton County. And in our state, we have Rep. Pat Fallon. We have our newly elected governor, our newly elected Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, our newly elected Attorney General Ken Paxton. We have scores that are now coming up to be righteous leaders. And I just want to say that I think that even with the work left to do, there's room to rejoice. Please join me. Gracious and Almighty Father, thank you for everything you do and the infinite blessings you give us every day. And help us to remember that your hand is in everything and that nothing ever surprises you. God, help us to raise righteous leaders out of our communities, spreading to other communities, spreading to other states, and ultimately covering this nation so that the people can rejoice. And that through that your glory is shown. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks, David. We had a town hall a couple years ago. We called it the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it was a no-holds-barred town hall. And I'd like to kind of keep the same format and really just briefly go over the last legislative session, the 83rd session, and talk about really 4 points of the good, the bad, and the ugly. 4 points in the good, 4 in the bad, and 4 unfortunately in the ugly. Not necessarily in that order. And then go through what we're planning on doing in the next session. And then give you just a brief background for those of you that may not know about the speaker's race. A little bit about Scott Turner, a little bit about Joe Strauss, the only 2 announced candidates we have right now, and give you as best as I can, I mean, we're all subjective to some point, but give you as best I can a factual, objective view of both candidates and what I know about them and what I've seen. And I'm trying to keep myself on time when somebody's calling me, so I apologize for that. But anyhow, in the last session, some of the good things that we did, welcome, thank you. Some of the good things that we did last session, one of which was HB 5, which was a House bill dealing with education, allowing acknowledging the fact that not all children are going to go to college, and that's okay. And we need folks, particularly in skilled labor, we need skilled workers if we're going to grow in Texas. So what we wanted to do is give local school districts more flexibility in developing paths for either college preparatory or vocational training. And that was pretty much the course that we heard from parents across the state when I was knocking on doors. We heard that, talking to school administrators and teachers. They wanted more flexibility. I was a co-author on that bill. We did get that bill passed. It was signed into law. And now that I'm touring we have about 7 school districts, either in whole or in part, in House District 106, the district I'm fortunate enough to represent. And many of them have vocational training centers. So when I'm able to tour some of those, which I've just done recently, it warms my heart when I ask those teachers what they think and the administrators there, and they love the fact that HB2 is now law. So I think that was a very good thing that we did. Another thing was HB 308, which was known quite simply as the Merry Christmas Bill. And that came about, my wife, ironically, before I was even sworn in, she saw this news report on, it was a fellow in Houston, Dwayne Bowick, who's the state rep, and he had this bill. He just wanted to make sure that we all were on the same page with acknowledging religious freedoms, that a child or a teacher or a student could say Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah or express a traditional religious holiday, much like you see right here with the menorah and the Christmas tree, and they can put Merry Christmas, and nobody can sue because it is state law. So my wife saw that, and she said to me, come here. She recorded on the DVR, and she played it for me. She said, if you do anything for me, you want to give me an early Christmas gift, make sure you help this man make this bill into a law. And I said, I had absolutely no idea how it all worked. I'd never gone down there. But I tried to muster up as much confidence as possible, and I said, you got it, baby. And so when we got sworn in that very day, the first thing I did was walk across the the floor, and I met Dwayne, and I introduced myself to him, and I said, how can I help you get this bill into law? And he said, Pat, this is great. We have 43 new freshman members. You're a freshman. You work the freshman class with me. This is not a partisan bill. I want Democrats on this bill as well. Let's get this thing passed. And lo and behold, the governor in June of 2013 did pass this bill. So happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas. It's sad that we're at a point in our society where we have to make a law to really state the obvious, but we are, and we did in Texas. That was another good thing. House Bill 2, which gained the most notoriety and national attention, was a pro-life omnibus bill, which really just did three things. And quite frankly, I think you could be pro-choice and still have voted for HB 2. Because what it said was, a woman has the option to have an abortion for 5 months. Thereafter, it is illegal to do so in the state of Texas. That's the first part of it. The second one was, where they perform abortions, the abortion clinic needs to be up to the standards of an ambulatory service center. And 3, the doctor performing the abortions has to have hospital privileges admitting privileges within 30 miles. I thought that was all reasonable. I thought it was really not only a pro-life bill, but one for women's health, to be quite honest. And it failed in the first special session due to Wendy Davis, and we all know what came up from that. Her journey, maybe in politics, is over. But in the second session, we did pass it. The governor did sign it into law. It is state law. It has been challenged in the courts, and we've had good news and bad news from thereabouts. But that was a good thing. I'm also going to have HB 2 in the bad section, and I'll explain why here in a minute as well. And then the last thing, in fact, the most noble thing that we did in the session was HJR 62, which was to put an amendment on the on the Texas Constitution. And that came about for several reasons, but what that did was to say, if you lose your spouse in military action while they're serving the country, you no longer have to pay property taxes again in the state of Texas. That's the least we can do. It's one less thing that widow or widower has to worry about. I was a co-author on that bill, and that really warmed my heart because Enrique Mondragon, we lost one of our own in Denton County last session. Sergeant Enrique Mondragon grew up in the colony. He met his wife in Frisco, and he lived in Little Elm, where she still lives, Katie Mondragon, with their now 5-year-old daughter, Beverly. And we had her down at the State House when we read the resolution honoring her husband. And that was a very touching moment because I wanted to give them a gift. She brought her daughter down because she knew anything that happened on the House floor would be recorded for posterity. So when Beverly is 60 years old, she can show her grandkids who their great-grandfather was. And so I wrote a little speech because, as you know, resolutions read rather dryly and they're legalese and lawyer. I call it Latin, lawyer. Therefore, they're not withstanding thereby kind of stuff. And I wanted to really write something that personified the sacrifice of the Mondragon family because he gave up probably 60 years of his life. Probably lived a long, happy life. And I couldn't get through the speech when I gave it to to Katie and my staff. And I didn't know what to do. Because that's not going to be a gift when a grown man gets on the front mic of the Texas House of Representatives and sits there and blubbers and cries. And so something told me, it was really odd, something told me to go see Scott Turner, who's going to come up later in this meeting, but who's the state rep in the Frisco, Collin County portion. And I went to see him. Now I'm in tears, and I think he thought that I had slammed my hand on the door or something. And he said to Scott, "Hey, champ, what's wrong?" And I told him, and he grabbed my hand. He said, "You come back with me in my office." So we talked about it. And he held my hand, and we prayed. And after the prayer was over, he said, "Hey, champ, you're going to do just fine. You're going to do just fine." And something came over me. I've talked to God 46 years of my life. He never talked back. But I just felt this overwhelming calm, and I knew right then and there that I was going to do just fine. It was going to be okay. And so I went to the House floor, and I do so much public speaking that I don't really get nervous anymore. But that day, I had never stood on the front microphone at the Texas House, and I'm a freshman. I've only been there 6 weeks, and there's 149 other members, unlike the city council. And I stood there on that podium, and I was very nervous. And I wanted to give the Mondragon family a gift. Now, I knew some of the Veterans Caucus was going to stand up from their seats and stand behind me, because that's what you do in the House. When you really support something a member says. And so I saw some in my peripheral vision as I was getting ready. I saw some members doing that. Much to my surprise, I was so laser focused on my remarks. When I looked up, To start them, there wasn't anyone in their seats. Every member of the House had left their seats to come and stand behind me, which made the speech a whole lot easier to give. Because but nonetheless, that was very touching. And Enrique Mondragon, who'd never met a state rep, and I never met him, and none of the other 149 in the body, brought us all together that day. Didn't matter what shape, shade, size, party, area in Texas you were from, he brought us together. And that was really magical. And after it was over, Tom Craddock, the former Speaker of the House, grabbed me. He's served for 46 years, the longest serving member in the Texas House in our history as a state. He said, Pat, I'm going to tell you something. I've been here 46 years. I have never seen every member of the House get up off their chairs and stand behind a member. So that's something that's very special, and I think we did give that gift to Incidentally, there's a beautiful photo. We have house photographers, and one of them had snuck up into the gallery and taken a picture from the gallery shooting down. And there's me at the podium with every member of the House standing behind me. We got it blown up and framed and gave it to Enrique's widow, Katie. And it was really just, it personifies that whole story. The picture truly is worth 1,000 words. So those are a lot of the good things. And listen, there's 6,000 bills. There were lots of good things that happened. There were lots of bad things. We have not nearly the time to go through them. I just picked some highlights. Some of the bad things that happened, unfortunately, were some of the bills that were really good and I think would have made Texas better, more efficient, more free, liberty, that kind of thing, died in committees or on the floor. Most of them died in committees. One of which was a bill that I had authored, which was HB 889, which we've refiled this year, which is simply to say if you're a city, school district, or county over 50,000 in population, you should film your regularly scheduled meetings and post them online within a week. It costs virtually nothing now. I'm talking $100 or $2 possibly a year. Now you can spend more than that, but that's the bare bones version. And we were letting people even film them on a tripod like these cameras here and posting them a week later. Now fortunately, most of the districts in our area do this already. Most of our cities do, and our counties do, but not across the state. And that really is something we need to shape up. Because if you live in a big county or a big school district, then you can't make the hour-and-a-half drive. You'd like to see what's going on, and minutes do not reflect a meeting. You know, with the technology that we have now, let's leverage that for more transparent government, because open government is good government. That bill died, well, it was put on the, it hit the floor the very last day of session, and there was no way we were possibly going to get to it. So it essentially died in calendars, for lack of a better term. Another thing was HB 950 from a Democrat from Houston, Sophronia Thompson. Has been in the House for over 40 years. It was basically a state equivalent of the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which was President Obama's signature piece of legislation when he took office in 2009. Now, they will tell you, the proponents of the bill, to say it's equal pay for women bill. Now, who in God's green earth would be against that? I mean, I'm a business owner with 100 employees. It is very difficult to find good employees. So if you're going to discriminate against anyone, you're going to be a very poor business owner. And you're a moron, and you're an idiot, and I don't like you. But that's not what this bill did. This bill was a trial lawyer's dream. It said, we're not going to there's a statute of limitations on these kinds of civil cases. We're going to remove that statute. So in essence, if you felt you were discriminated against with PEG, which is very difficult to prove, incidentally, in 1970, you can still sue now if there are certain conditions met. And that's not good for anybody. It's bad for business. Nearly every Republican in Washington voted against it. And I was one of the Republicans to speak up against it as well. I thought it was, first, for that matter, it wasn't needed either. It was already federal law. You don't need a state equivalent of it. It was redundant as well. That should never have hit the House floor, but it did. And it passed our House. The governor ended up having to veto it. Or it died in the Senate. Actually, with 6,000 bills, you get a little shady after a year and change. SB 1729 by Chairman Byron Cook had put an amendment on there to allow illegal immigrants to have driver's licenses in the state of Texas. I'm not a proponent of that for obvious reasons. And it died on a point of order. But that was interesting because he's a chairman of state affairs, very powerful member, and that's something that he believes in. And I don't. I think that was a bad bill. And then SB 346, which said if you're a 501c4 company that receives funds, and you're in political activities, you need to reveal your donors. However, very inconsistent in that it exempted labor unions, which I found to be incredibly unfair. And that was a Republican member carrying that bill. And it did pass the House. That's bad. It passed the Senate, but when they realized they passed it, they wanted to recall it back and they wouldn't let it. Now, the governor vetoed that. So I do think that's where I got it, because the other bill was died in the Senate. Now, I do not think SB 346 would ever pass now in the Senate that we have now. There's no absolute way. The Senate has substantively changed. But that was something that was a little odd for a House that has 95 Republican members and 55 Democratic members. That's where you would think maybe would be going on in California. Some of the ugly, HB 4, this stuff is good government. I don't think this stuff has anything to do with partisanism, and it really does fire me up. HB 415 simply said, any member, when you leave office, you cannot become a registered lobbyist for 2 years. We serve 2-year terms. I felt that cooling off period, quite frankly, I'd be fine with a decade. I'd be fine with a lifetime ban. But you get, you take what you can get in that pot. I was a joint author on that bill. It didn't get anywhere. HB 524, Representative Giovanni Capriglione in Grapevine. And by the way, incident, if you are ever in a bad mood, or you're ever down, just say 2 words. Giovanni Capriglione! And you will force a smile on your face, because it's just a wonderful name to say. But Gio had a very good bill, 524, which was to say, if we have contracts as state legislators with local governmental entities, which, by the way, until I read his bill, I didn't even know was legal. I honestly didn't, and I don't think it was. But I can do business with the school district. I can, me personally, my company, I can do it if sole proprietorship or a company. I can do business with a city, ironically enough. I don't think we should, but you don't even, I don't even have to disclose it to you if I'm doing it. I was a joint author on that bill because we wanted to just say, if you're doing it, tell the people that you're doing it. I think that's awfully fair. And that got nowhere. In fact, there was a big hubbubaloo in the, I think that went to Ways and Means, and or it was State Affairs. And regardless, Gio, when he laid that bill out, got it from those members. It was early on in the session. You can look it up, and if you email our office, we can point you in the right direction so you can see it for yourself. It was fascinating, and mostly it was the Republican members that were really getting on him, and it was embarrassing. And one of the people that really went after him ran statewide and got shellacked, didn't even make the runoff. So, poetic justice, I suppose. And then 1467, and I've done probably 50 of these in front of the towns, because we represent 12 towns in this district. I've done them in Republican groups, I've done them in every chamber, and this is the one that really disgusts audiences the most and constituents. Okay. If you serve 8 years in the House or Senate combined, or in one of the bodies, you're eligible for a pension when you're 60 years old. People don't have that much heartburn about that. Or it's 12 years at 50. But if you get convicted of a felony due to abuse of office, you steal campaign funds, you double bill, you get the state reimbursement, and you bill your campaign, or you sell votes. When you get out of prison, you're convicted of a felony, you go to prison, you get out of prison, you still get your pension. That is absolute madness. That's bad government. We've got to do something about that. That's obvious. I don't know, not one person in the year and a half that I've been home has said to me, lay off that one. I think you're wrong. I think that's nobody. And usually about once a session, somebody gets dinged and somebody gets arrested. This session that I was in, we had a member get arrested for DWI. She's no longer a member of the House. She got beat in her primary. She was from El Paso. The session before that, we had a member get convicted of a felony because he was double billing. It was campaign funds and also taking reimbursement from the state. Session before that, a member from Dallas was convicted of a felony. She was selling votes. She actually went to prison. She was in the Pope for about 2 years. So it happens, and we've got to do something about it. Quite frankly, I'd like to make it retroactive as well. So, and then lastly, on the ugly, the HB2 delay. The governor called a special session. And I have the exact dates and all, but it was roughly at the end of May. He called the special session. I think it was May 27th. But then we have 30 days to consider whatever he puts on the call. And he added HB2 pro-life issues on the call 11 or 12 days later. I'm not sure as to why they delayed it, but they did. And then the House, we didn't really get after it and get it through committee and pop it out for a vote until really late in the session. And that's where you started to see whoa, they might be, if we kick it over to the Senate, they might actually be able to, one of those Democratic senators may be able to filibuster. So, and also, incidentally, to be fair, 5 Democratic members of the House and 1 Democratic member of the Senate voted for House Bill 2, the pro-life omnibus bill. My dad, being a pro-life Democrat from Massachusetts, told me, I want you to tell every one of those Democrats that I thank them and I'm praying for them. And I went to each one and did that, and I didn't think it'd be that big a deal, but it was rather emotional. A couple of people welled up with tears, and, but it was heartfelt, so just an interesting little private side. So that's kind of last session. What we're planning on doing next session is refiling some of those things that died, because I don't think I was essentially hired to do this job by trying something and quitting. I'm going to try, I'm going to try, I'm going to try. If it's the right thing to do, I'm going to repeat it. And you learn little tricks. As a freshman member going in, you don't really know a lot about, in fact, they try to keep you in the dark as much as possible. But you can learn things, one of which is, it's okay if they want to kill every single bill you offer. You do smart things like look for other bills that you can throw your bill on as an amendment. And then you force a House vote. You force that floor vote because you can't deny an amendment. You've got to either accept that amendment as part of the legislation or deny it. And the body has to decide that. So that's an interesting little trick. And we are already, our staff is already scouring pre-filed legislation to see what bills we have that can go on to other bills. So that's kind of a neat thing. So we have refiled bill formerly known as 889. It is now House Bill 283 if you want to follow these things. That's the one about filming the meetings and putting them online, just your regular scheduled stuff. HB 415, 2-year cooling off period for lobbyists, is now House Bill 314. Now we were the joint authors on that, now that we're the primary authors on it. And then our old friend HB 1467 is now House Bill 425. And that's the one that we're really looking to put on as amendment to get at, because how can you vote against that? I mean, I'm sure there's some lawyers going to try to, you have a lot of lawyers in the House. Half the Democrats are lawyers, and only 20% of the Republicans are. Nonetheless, a lot of lawyers in the House, so might be somebody that has Harper and Over. House Bill 3575 I filed last session. I'm going to refile it. It was the bill, and boy, this fell into our lap, and we really should have hit this out of the park and didn't. Before the Travis County District Attorney was arrested for drinking and driving and made a spectacle of herself, I had filed this bill, in which simply said, if no prosecutor, no district attorney prosecutor should have any authority outside their county. We do not elect the Travis County District Attorney. We don't get a say in that. Only 3% of Texans do, the people who live in Travis County. He or she should have all the jurisdiction a DA has within that county. Outside of that county, none. Well, she's the head of the Public Integrity Unit for the entire state of Texas as well. You may remember Ronnie Earl in the malicious prosecution of Tom DeLay. We had to endure that. That was clearly partisan. It was ridiculous. That was abuse of office. That did get overturned in the courts, but look what it did to Tom DeLay for years, right? And the expense and the agony. Well, so I figure when that happened, when she got arrested, I don't wish any, ill will on anyone, but I thought to myself, if we're ever going to pass this thing, now's the time. The head of the Public Integrity Unit in the state of Texas is in jail.
Yes.
She's in prison. She got sentenced to 45 days. She told the cops they didn't know who they were dealing with, and she had a big bottle of vodka. I mean, it was a big mess. They got it all online. You can see it. It's just, you can't even believe it. It's terrible. Well, I laid it out in front of State Affairs, and I was told that the chairman wasn't going to call out for a vote. So I asked him if he would do that, and he kept telling me no. Fine, and I remember one day on the floor, I just wouldn't leave his side. I just kept, but I think you would feel better about yourself if you allowed the vote. And you got to play those games on the floor. And so finally he said to me, okay, look, you want to get this, you get me the votes. You prove to me you have the votes on my committee, and you can't count on my vote. I said, fair enough. And I knew there was one other Republican member who was very against it, and it was Charlie Guerin, because he spoke out very publicly about it. So he wasn't going to vote for it as well. So then I needed one Democrat. I needed all the rest of the Republicans and one Democrat to at least allow it for a vote. So I went to all the Republicans, got them all to sign on, cajoling, arm twisting, massaging, flattering, cajoling, beseeching. And then I had to go to one Democrat. And I knew the one that I don't want to, because there's cameras out, he's running for another office, he's a nice guy, and he's in a very Democratic area, and I hope he does win, so I don't want to call him out, because if they know that a Republican like me supported him, he's dead in the water. But he was nice enough to say, you know what, Pat, I'll let the process play out. I'll vote this out. Probably gonna vote against it on the floor, but I'll let you get it to the floor. What shocked me, bipartisan, was wonderful, maybe more than DC. So I went back and I had all the members' signatures, and I said, I have the votes. Well, it's too late now, I can't get it up. I guess, I was thinking, where's our bond on the floor? So I don't know if he has a different version of that, but that's what I remember rather distinctly. So that was a disappointing thing. But then what happens? The governor gets indicted, and it was clearly partisan by exercising